Hi, I'm Hunter Riedlinger, and today I will be telling the story of The Study in the Scarlet by Sherlock Holmes. I have my handy-dandy little notes I took as I was reading through it. So, yeah, kind of just summaries of every couple pages I was reading, and yep, here I go. To start off, is like a quick little summary of how I felt about the book. It was a short story, well, not really, yeah, kind of shorter story of a revenge as well as a mystery or a detective story, which I thought was pretty enjoyable and I liked it, so I recommend anybody who's watching to read it. So it starts off with, hold on. Starts off with Watson explaining how he received his Doctor of Medicine degree in 1978 from the University of London, but then was sent to the Bomboy, being assigned to wartime duties as an assistant surgeon. He soon traveled to Kandahar. He was struck in the shoulder by a bullet and was dragged back to British lines. After, when he was somewhat healed, his country dispatched him to England so he could become fully healed and up to health and everything. So they gave him money to live in a hotel. Soon as money was running out and he had to go find a new living situation. But one day he was at the bar and he ran into an old friend named Stamford. They were happy to see each other and they just began chatting amongst themselves. Watson soon brought up how he needed a living place, and Stamford told him that he knew someone who was looking for a new roommate. Stamford explained to Watson that Sherlock Holmes was a strange man and was very studious and quiet. Watson asked for Stamford to introduce them, and he agreed, and they made their way to the hospital where Sherlock worked. They showed up in the front of the door where Sherlock worked, aka his office, kind of. Sherlock greeted them and Stamford finally introduced Sherlock and Watson to each other. Holmes started explaining his discovery, which was the infallible test for the blood stains, and showed how the old ones weren't as good as the new one he came up with. Sooner or later, they started talking, and they brought up of how Watson needed a living space, and Sherlock said, sure, and they started living together. The first part of the story is a detective story where Sherlock was introduced to a crime and step by step solved it. Soon Watson found an article, and soon Sherlock started telling him what he did more and more of. Somewhere in there we were introduced to a bunch of different characters like Detective Lestrade and Tobias Garrison, his rival, as well as the Baker Street irregulars. And soon it took off to part 2, where they were taken through a backstory, which follows early lives of 2 murdered men and their killer from their meeting to the present day until the case was closed. And it also talked about the case closing. So that's practically my little spiel on how everything worked out. It was a great book, and yeah, so read it sometime.